Hello, all, and welcome to another Vikings with Loki. How are we doing today, Loki?
Doing great. How are you doing, brother?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Love the hat.
Yeah. It's my keepsake from when I was where it was warm and no snow on the fucking ground. Um, then I had to come back here, right? What the fuck? So where are we going today in the Viking world?
Well, there's a Danish chronicle of Saxo Grammaticus,
Okay.
and it is the very first text. So the very first written mention of a man named Bjorn Ironside
Ah,
as the king of Sweden. So
interesting.
according to this chronicle, Ragnar Lothbrok, who had a quarrel. We all know Ragnar, first big, huge explorer of the Vikings coming out of Scandinavian. He had a quarrel with the ruler of Sweden. And so Ragnar decides, well, I'll just invade Sweden. And he takes his sons, he takes Bjorn, Fridleif, Radbard, and before the battle, both sides get together and agree that they're going to have combat. It's going to be Ragnar and his sons versus their champion Starcat and his 7 sons in the sight of both armies. So both armies will gather around the battlefield and watch these two sides go at it. So Ragnar's going to have his 3, so that's 4, and then you've got Starcad and his 7. So it's I mean 2-on-1,
Yeah.
but they're Swedes.
Yeah.
So Bjorn, having inflicted great slaughter without any harm to himself, um, gained this name, this Ironside name. And Ragnar and his boys took out these 8 opponents after the fight. All basically the armies surrounding both armies surrounded them. Um, Ragnar's army just jumps the other army and they completely annihilate them.
Yeah.
And Ragnar is so impressed with his son, Bjorn, that he tells him, "You can rule Sweden. It's yours. You can have it. I don't really care. This guy just pissed me off. I didn't like him. I didn't like the look on his face.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sweden really isn't that big of a deal to me. You can have him." So there's all kinds of stories about Bjorn. There's sagas of both Ragnar and his sons talking about Ragnar's life, his son's life. Ragnar's death was obviously a big one. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
One of the things that Bjorn did, though, which was huge, was he explored the Mediterranean. Nobody had really successfully mapped everything at this point in
Okay.
time and this point in history. So you've got this Viking raiding party that goes into the Mediterranean, and some say this was Bjorn's kind of expulsion from his father and his armies. This was his go out and make something of yourself party. You know,
Okay.
you've been around dad too long. Go and make your own legend.
Yeah.
Go and become your own man. So he goes into the Mediterranean and he goes into the Straits of Gibraltar, and at the coast of Medina, he loses 2 ships to catapults in a
Oh.
raid by an Andalusian army, and
Hmm.
he only has 20 ships. Um, the remnants of his fleet goes to France, and in 862, Bjorn leads an expedition um, that will later be chronicled by William. I think it's a weird way to say the name. Jimenez. It's not
Okay.
a Hispanic name.
Yeah.
I think that's how it's pronounced. There's all kinds of stories of Bjorn conducting Viking raids, Bjorn going to France. So when he went to France, this was summer of 855. He he sits off of the CN and starts to raid ships. He gets into it with the French nobility. Viking army meets French army, and eventually he has to put up tent for winter. He has to basically winterize everything, and all
Yeah.
combat stops. But then he gets reinforcements. So this other Viking, Sigtrig, shows up, and reinforcements. They are raiding West Francia when he decides, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to leave. They leave with plenty of gold, silver, whatever they wanted. He was unstoppable. Eventually he dies, and some say he went home. Some say he went back to Sweden and died a king.
Okay.
But he leaves his children in charge, and they all fight. They all fight each other for control of Sweden. But most of his family survives that, and they were the original Swedish nobility.
Oh wow.
So, oh yeah, so you've got Vikings everywhere. You've got Vikings
Yeah.
everywhere in the world.
Well, yeah, they kind of just went wherever they damn well pleased. Well, as long as their boats could take them there, they went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now one of the interesting things I found is Oslog is supposed to be, and I know what a name, right?
Yeah.
Oslog was Ragnar's wife, and
Okay.
she was supposed to have Bjorn, Sigurd's snake in the eye. There are a couple different sons he has. Some people claim that Bjorn was never Ragnar's, that Bjorn was adopted. He
Okay.
was an adopted son. No one knows if this is true or not because there are no written histories
Yeah.
from
It's
that
just
time.
legend and what they can get from the what is written.
Now, one of the really interesting stories, another really interesting story here is that they went when they were in France. William of Jumeges refers to Bjorn as Bier Costa Biera, Ironside, who was Lotbraki Regis Philo, son of King Lodbrok,
Okay.
Ragnar Lothbrok. William's account of the Mediterranean expedition centers around Bjorn's foster father, Hasting. Two Vikings conducted many successful raids in France. Later on, Hasting got the idea to make Bjorn the new Roman emperor. They lead a large Viking fleet into the Mediterranean to go to Italy and go to Rome and take over Rome.
Oh wow.
So they go inland to a town called Muni. They believe this to be Rome. They're
Oh.
unable to breach the town walls. They devised this crazy plan, and this isn't the first time something like this has happened. If you remember when we talked about the Viking siege of France,
Yeah.
one of the stories was that Ragnar wanted to be buried a Christian, and he was their king. So the French nobility let him and a small group of Vikings into the city to be buried like a king, and he pops out of the coffin and
Yeah.
basically, they let their people into France to pillage
Yeah.
and have fun. Have fun, boys.
Yeah. They go in to open the door. It's kind of like the old
So
Trojan horse story.
they sent messengers to the bishop there uh, to say that being deathly ill, Ironside had a deathbed conversion and
Oh,
wished to be received as a Christian, be buried on consecrated ground within their church. He was
yeah,
brought into the chapel with a small honor guard, then surprised the dismayed clerics by leaping from his stretcher.
yeah,
Viking then hacked their way to the town gates, opened the doors, let everybody in. This is not the first time the story's been told like this.
yeah,
Just different with different players.
yeah. Different players, different plays.
So after they returned to Europe, the two men parted company. Bjorn was shipwrecked at the English coast and barely survived. He then went to Phrygia, where William says he died. There are some historical challenges. Hastings appears in the contemporary sources later than Bjorn. In order to be his foster father, he would have had to be around 80 years old when he died. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, this is 14, 15. This is, 800. So they didn't live as long back then. He could have lived to be 80 or 90 then. It was absolutely possible.
Mm,
And Vikings that got old just got more seasoned and came up with better and better ideas.
yeah, and they probably get a little bit of respect amongst the youngins, and because that was back in the days where they respected elders, um, unlike today. Um, you know, but why? So, did he get Ironsides from his dad, or was it?
Yes. No, his father's the one who named him Ironside. Basically, he could get hit. Supposedly, as the tale goes,
Mhm.
he was stricken on his sides and he wasn't cut. So
Oh.
imagine being hit by a blade to your sides,
Mhm.
but you weren't cut by that blade. There was
Oh,
no
okay.
there. Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's why
So,
he was called Ironside, because they basically dubbed him
uh,
invulnerable from harm.
gotcha. Probably more myth than truth, but yeah.
And
Probably very
there's a barrow in Sweden that's called the Barrow Bjorn Ironside, and there was a stone that's now just fragments, but at the time is a rune stone, and it said crowns the barrows of Bjorn Ironside.
Oh, okay.
And it's all broken into pieces now, but you can still see some of the writing
Hmm.
on those pieces of stone.
Cool.
So there are little
There are little
little
hints and
little hints that all of this is fact.
yeah, but
Yes.
but I just think it's so cool that, cuz we as, cocky 21st century people, we are always, well, prove it, we'll prove it. And you could have a million things of proof and it's like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. And then, you know, you go back into that time frame and you're, oh shit. Yep. Oops. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. That's one way to get a name, right?
That's right. And his brother had an even more interesting name, Ivar the Boneless.
Oh, interesting. Was he a
And
blob?
well, the exact word is in Scandinavian was Benlausi,
Okay.
Beinlausi, and it translates to legless.
Oh, okay.
So some of the sagas described him as lacking legs, bones, or having a skeletal condition,
Okay.
osteogenesis imperfecta. So basically, not having bones in his legs.
Okay. So maybe a little bit of deformity there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and part of that supposedly was from a curse that his
Ah, well,
mother.
of course, there's got to be a curse in there somewhere.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully everybody's found this a little bit entertaining, a little bit uh, knowledgeable, and You know, now we know why the Swedes keep all the money, right?
Right.
They have a long history of keeping the money. All right. Well, thank you, Loki, for joining us, and look forward to the next one. Till next time, take her easy, folks.
Thank you for having me, brother.